Hey friend, thanks for listening to the Fixate Phoenix podcast. We are praying that you are blessed by this week's message. If you would like to partner with the future of Fixate, you can visit fixatephx.com/give.
Dear Father God, I thank you so much for just who you are, God. Thank you so much for creating us in your image, God. Thank you so much for walking with us on this journey that you put us on, God. Lord, I'm thankful for this church. I'm thankful for the community where we get to praise and worship you, God. We get to give up our lives continuously, God, to put you at the forefront, to lift you on high, God, to say we love you. God, we thank you so much for the grace that you pour upon us. We thank you so much for being in this place, God. Lord, this morning I ask that you rid of us any worries, anything that's troubling us, God, and allow us a free mind and a free spirit to worship you and to hear from your word, Father. I ask that you bring us a word, God, something that may be able to sit with us, Father, something that will help us as we go out into the scary world. God, we're so grateful for you. We're so grateful for who you are, and to be able to call you Father. And it's in Jesus' name. Amen. Oh, man. Well, again, I am going to give a word on joy this morning. Before I do, I wanted to share a little bit about myself, share a couple stories just to help you guys get an idea of who I am, how I grew up, and kind of set the stage a little bit for what we're going to be talking about. But again, my name is Jarrell. I am originally from Houston, Texas, moved here in 2017, and Arizona's been home ever since. I wanted to take you guys back to a time I was a lot younger. I was in middle school, actually. And back in the day, I'm not that old, but back in my day, something that was really popular and I guess the thing that everybody wanted was that Polo Ralph Lauren collar shirt and T-shirt and button up. It was Polo everything. And I remember not having any, but seeing all my friends with these collar shirts and looking all fly. And man, I wanted to be a part of that. And so I went to my father, and we didn't have a bunch of money. Our finances wasn't always the greatest, but my dad always wanted to give me the things that I wanted. So I went to him. I said, Dad, can you please give me some Polo collar shirts so I can wear to school? And one day he came home from work, and he had two in a bag, and man, I was so excited. I had a solid color, and I had stripes, and I'm like, ooh, I'm gonna be killing them tomorrow. I can't wait. I had so much joy. That gift that my father gave me brought me so much happiness. I mean, I was on cloud 9. Couldn't wait to go to school the next day. Had the outfit already, had the shoes to match, made sure that the pants was ironed. Do y'all iron still? I was, my pants was nice and ironed. I was crispy, we like to call it, crispy. But I remember getting to school, and I did not get the reaction that I was looking for. I thought I was going to have people around me like, oh, wiping me down. I thought it was going to be just a time to celebrate me and how great I was and how great I looked. And man, I got to school, and it was not that. It was not that at all. Nobody was noticing me. Nobody was giving me compliments on the way I was looking. And, I think we all have those friends that don't really like to tell us the truth because they love us so much. But then we have those friends who is a little bit too honest and is going to tell us exactly what's going on. And I had a friend, and he came up to me. He said, hey, man, why you come up in here with that off-brand polo? And I said, what? Off-brand? What? This the polo. Look, I got the horse. He said, man, the polo is supposed to have one horse with the guy riding it playing polo. That's the Ralph Lauren brand. He said, you got two horses with nobody riding them. I said, what? He said, yeah, man, that's the Walmart brand. And I said, oh my gosh, my pops did me wrong. And I had no idea. I mean, I just thought mine looked a little different, but man, I can tell you, I had so much joy, and in the instance, that joy just went away, completely left me. Another story, and this one isn't about me, it's about my father, but weekend after weekend, my dad was going to this dealership looking at this Chevy Tahoe that he really wanted, big truck, and it wasn't super new or anything like that, but for us, it was definitely going to be an upgrade. And one day after football practice, I'm waiting on my dad, and all of a sudden I hear this honking, and it's my dad in this truck that he had been wanting for so long. And man, we were so excited. I was so happy for him. He was smiling ear to ear, so joyful. And he's like, hey, you want to go to the car wash? I'm like, heck yeah, let's go to the car wash. And so we go to the car wash, and we start going through it, and almost immediately, a ton of water just started coming down from the roof. I mean, just pouring. And I have a little bit of a sickness. I can't help but to laugh when someone's going through tragedy sometimes. I've been praying about it. Pray for me. Not when someone's facing death or anything like that, but yeah, just a minor inconvenience, like our car being filled with water. And my dad was like, had his hand up trying to stop the water from coming down. And what really set me off is when he just gave up and water was just coming down. I mean, so much water, it filled the cup holders. Water was coming down from his brim. And man, I look back at it now and I'm like, man, that's so sad, because my dad was so happy and so excited. And all of a sudden, that joy had just left us. Last story I want to tell, and this one's a little bit more recent. For the ones that don't know, I longed to play professional sports my entire life. Growing up in Texas, starting football at the age of 6, that's something that we all wanted to do, was, make it to the next level and play in the NFL. And needless to say, I worked really hard and tried to put myself in a position to do that. And then 2017, I signed my first contract to play for the Arizona Cardinals. That brought me here, and man, that was the most joyful moment of my life. I was so happy, so cheerful. It was like an out-of-body experience. I was just so excited. But not so long after, I realized that, man, this is not what I thought it would be. I had friends on the team that was disappearing left and right, lockers being emptied out, guys making mistakes and getting hurt, and man, it was like a lot of sorrow. And I realized, like, man, it's really hard to make it to the NFL, but it's even harder to stay in the NFL. And I realized, like, I'm pretty miserable. Like, there's not a lot of fun things about this. And not to mention, we would sit in these film sessions with the entire team, and the coaches would essentially just highlight every mistake you ever made and kind of call you out. And it was to get the most out of us, but that was not easy. It's something that I had longed for so long, something that I thought would bring me so much joy, ended up bringing me sorrow and loss, and kind of put me in a place where I was lost, because, my whole life I was, longing after this thing that I thought would make life perfect, and he kind of did the opposite. And I tell you guys these stories this morning because I feel like a lot of us, when we think about joy and the joy that we have, it's this instantaneous joy that comes moment to moment based off of like worldly things and blessings and the way our career is going at the time, or maybe relationships that we're in. It's all dependent on that. And what I want to kind of expose to us this morning is a sustainable joy, a joy that we can hold on to, a joy that we can keep, a joy that doesn't come with any of the anxieties and worries to keep it. In other words, I want to reveal to us a joy that comes from the Lord. So with that, I wanted to start with a story in the Bible that I feel like kind of highlights the importance of joy and what it means to have joy, and kind of highlights the opposite of joy in the same space. So if you can turn to 2 Samuel chapter 6. That's what we're going to be reading out of this morning. And today I titled this message, Moments to Mission, Embracing Sustainable Joy in the Lord. And we're going to look at what it means to live in the moments to moments where sometimes we're happy, sometimes we're not, and how it may look to have more of a sustainable joy in God. So 2 Samuel 6, we're actually going to be reading verses 13 through 23. But before I do that, I kind of want to set the stage a little bit and kind of give a summary of what's going on. So King David had been blessed to bring the ark of God that has been away from the people of Israel for so long back to Israel. And David had planned to bring the ark to the city of David so it could be in his presence. So he brought 30,000 of his men to go and retrieve this ark. And as they were doing that, they took the ark and they placed it on a cart. And a couple of people that was looking over it, Uzzah in Ohio, was to make sure that the ark stayed safe. Ohio was in front, Uzzah was in the back. And as they were traveling back to the city of David, there was a lot of celebration and worshiping and gladness. And at some point, one of the oxen actually stumbled, and Uzzah reached out his hand to make sure that the ark didn't fall and to steady the ark. And this angered God, and he actually struck Uzzah down and killed him in that moment. And this troubled David. It scared him, because he had realized how powerful the ark of God was and how sacred it was, and that brought a lot of fear. So instead of bringing it back to the city of David, he actually gave it to Obed-Edom for him to keep it, because he wanted no part of that after seeing Uzzah get struck to death. After 3 months of Obed-Edom kind of like having the ark, it was told to David that Obed-Edom, he had been blessed. His whole family had been blessed. God was blessing him so much for being in the presence of the Lord. And David was like, I need to go get that. I need that blessing. So he actually went to go retrieve the ark back from Obed-Edom to take it to the city of David. And that's where we're going to pick up this morning at verse 13. And it says, after the men who were carrying the ark of the God had gone 6 steps, David sacrificed a bull and a fattened calf. And David danced before the Lord with all his might, wearing a priestly garment. So David and all the people of Israel brought up the ark of the Lord with shouts of joy and blowing of ram's horns. But as the ark of the Lord entered the city of David, Michal, the daughter of Saul, looked down on him from her window. When she saw the king leaping and dancing before the Lord, she was filled with contempt for him. They brought the ark of God and set it in its place inside the special tent David had prepared for it. And David sacrificed burnt offerings and peace offerings to the Lord. When he had finished his sacrifices, David blessed the people in the name of the Lord, heaven's armies. Then he gave every Israelite man and woman in the crowd a loaf of bread, a cake of dates, a cake of raisins. Then all the people returned to their homes. This has nothing to do with the message, but a cake of dates and raisins, that sounds gross. I mean, anybody ever tasted a date before? It tastes straight like dirt. If there's any health freaks out there, I'm sorry, but it tastes like dirt. I'm just being honest. All right, picking back up in verse 20. When David returned home to bless his family, Michal, the daughter of Saul, came out to meet him. She said in disgust, "How distinguished the king of Israel looked today, shamelessly exposing himself to the servant girls that a vulgar person might do." David reported to Michal, and I love this part because David hit her with a 2-piece and a biscuit. Watch this. David said to Michal, "I was dancing before the Lord, who chose me above your family. He appointed me as the leader of Israel, the people of the Lord. So I celebrated before the Lord. Yes, and I am willing to look even more foolish than this, even to be humiliated in my own eyes. But those servant girls you mentioned will indeed think I am distinguished." So Michal, the daughter of Saul, remained childless throughout her entire life. And so I wanted to go back and just point out a couple of things that I felt like stuck out to me in this passage. And the first thing is this: You can either have joy or resentment. You can't have both. See, here we see two different sides. We see King David, who is so happy, so joyful, unapologetically just giving all to God, singing and dancing, sacrificing, giving gifts, making a fool of himself, as some people may call it, for the Lord, because he had so much joy, a pure joy. And on the other side, we have Michal, who was so bitter, who was looking at David with disgrace, who had bitterness in her heart, wasn't thinking about the fact that he was praising the Lord and giving his all to the Lord, but more so, she was thinking about how it looked. See, I have an idea that Michal was looking at David with contempt because he was the king of Israel, God's chosen people. He carried a certain status, and people lifted him up as in this certain popularity where he shouldn't be behaving this way in front of all the people of Israel. And that really bothered her. It bothered her. The next point I have is this. Never prioritize pride over praise. I think this is huge because, like I was just saying, for Michal, it was all about how people felt about David, how people looked at him, what she thought people was thinking about their family and their kingdom. But when it comes to praise and joy and worshiping, that's a place where pride shouldn't exist. It should never exist. It should be so far away from us that sometimes we look a little silly when we worship. Sometimes we look a little crazy when we're praising. Sometimes we're so excited where they're like, what's up with this guy? Why is he always so happy? Because joy is something that is a gift and something that we should hold dear and tight to ourselves. That leads me to the next point. The purest form of worship sometimes looks like an unrefined joy. I want to tell you guys another story. Here at Fixate, we hold one of the craziest baptisms I ever seen. It's pretty rowdy. It's pretty crazy. And I've had the opportunity to kind of help with the baptisms a few times. And one of the last times we had got done with baptisms, and man, I was so hyped. The fact that so many people were giving their lives to God and so many people were being saved, and there were so many people there to celebrate, and the tears and the joy that I saw in people's eyes, man, it just put me on another level of excitement. And I remember Micah standing up here and he said, push all the pews back. And we started pushing the pews back, and the chairs was getting moved, and everybody came up to the front of the stage. And boy, I tell you, we worshiped and worshiped and worshiped. We was jumping around, dancing crazy. And I'm usually pretty reserved, but in that moment, I was so hyped to just worship and celebrate the fact that so many people have gave their life to God in that moment. And I almost had no regrets in that whole moment, almost went the whole night with no regrets. But unfortunately, the excitement got a little bit too much for me to bear. And I was standing next to the baptism pool, and for some reason, I just started splashing the water in the air. I started splashing everybody. Everybody was getting baptized. And I don't know why I did that, honestly. But I can say in the moment, I could care less. I was so happy. My toes was all out. My shirt was soaking wet. And football players, we got some ugly toes, y'all. And I mean, and they was all out. I really didn't care. I think that's the type of worship that we need to have. That is the type of posture that God wants us in, where we don't care how other people look at us or what other people think. We're just giving our joy to him because he's given us so much. Like that should be the main point of when we're worshiping and praising the Lord. The last point I have from that message is this: where there is no joy, there is no purpose. I want to go back and I want to read the last couple of verses 22 and 23. And again, it says, yes, I am willing to look even more foolish than this even to be humiliated in my own eyes. But those servant girls you mentioned will indeed think I am distinguished. So Michal, the daughter of Saul, remained childless throughout her whole life. At the surface, when I was first reading this, I just took that as that was her punishment for the bitterness that she had had in her life. The fact that she was no longer able to bear children. But then after doing a little bit more research, I realized, and something that was brought to my attention was during that time, for a woman to be with child was actually served as her main purpose. And so to go a little deeper, it wasn't just her ability to have children that she lost, but it was her ability to have purpose. And the thought of joy in our worship and putting God before what other people may think is so heavy and so deep and so important that God says, without joy, you can have no purpose. And that's what we see here in this story. So after I kind of got this passage and I was preparing, I started to kind of take self-reflection of my own life and like, man, where does my joy come from? Am I a joyful person? And I started to think about that. And as I was thinking about 2024, as we're coming to the end of the year and thinking about, man, what are some things that brought me joy this year? A couple of stories came to mind. One, I was actually in a Walmart parking lot. And I just want to say, don't go to Walmart. Don't, there's no peace there. There's no way you can be happy. I know it's cheaper. But for that 75 cents that you're going to save, like, go have peace somewhere else. Go to Costco or Safeway. Go somewhere else. Aldi. Just don't go to Walmart. But anyways, I was in Walmart in a parking lot going into the store, and I saw this woman. She was walking, and it was summertime, guys. It was really hot, and she was fully clothed, long dress, long sleeves, and I actually noticed that she had a bandage around her leg, and she was using one of the carts to help her walk upright. And she came to me, and she was speaking in this very low voice, and she had a really deep, thick African accent. I couldn't really understand her, and so I moved close, and she said, "Is there any way that you can help me? I have children at home, and we just need help." And that's all she said in a very, very low voice. And I remember just feeling this pull to help her. I mean, at the same time, I had actually just quit my job and decided that I wanted to go the full entrepreneurial route. And I was kind of struggling. Me and my family, we were kind of struggling financially. But, I kind of listened to the Lord, and I went in, and I got cash back, and I got $100, and I came out, and I gave it to her. And I'll never forget her response. She actually took my hand, and she started smacking it. And I was like, oh, my God, this lady is crazy. She started smacking my hand. And that low-toned voice that she once had went away, and she started shouting, "May the Jesus of Nazareth bless you. May the Jesus of Nazareth bless you. May the Jesus of Nazareth bless you." And I remember being so shaken. I didn't even know that she was a woman of faith, someone that believed in Jesus. But for her to give me that blessing, that's something that I definitely held tight to me. And on my drive home, I just remember feeling so much joy. And every time I think about that story, there's so much joy that comes with it. Another story this year, I had a pretty close friend come up to me and a couple of guys one day, and he said, "Guys, I need prayer. I think me and my wife just had a miscarriage." And I was so sad for them and so hurt. And I remember us gathering around him, circling and praying for him. And we prayed and we encouraged them. And in my heart, I was just praying that they may be able to heal. And less than 2 hours after that, I got a text. And he said, "Thank you guys so much for praying for me. We went to the doctor, and the baby is completely healthy. That scare that we had, they don't know why it happened, but the baby is completely healthy." And I don't even remember what I had going on that day, but man, that brought me so much joy and happiness. The fact that God came, answered our prayers, and made a miracle happen. Man, such a great time. Another part of this year that brought so much joy to my life was actually my daughter telling me that she loved me for the first time. Before she was going to sleep, I looked at her and I said, "I love you, baby girl." And she looked back and she said, "Lulu." Man, let me tell you, I don't care how much of a man you are, how gangster you may feel. If a little 16-month-old looks at you in your eyes and say, "I love you," you're gonna melt. Man, I melted. Just melted to the ground. Last story is I actually was able to speak for the first time earlier this year, and I had the opportunity to be a little vulnerable about some things that I had been going through and struggling with. And I was a little bit hesitant to share that story, but I remember after I spoke, I had so many guys come up to me and inviting themselves into my story, asking for help and prayer and for someone to kind of help them along this journey because they had been going through the same thing. And I remember thinking, wow, something that I really didn't want to share and something that I wrestled with has helped so many other guys. And now I have a relationship with these guys and I'm walking with them on their journey and we're kind of going through it together. And just the ability to be able to do that has brought me so much joy. And through thinking through these stories, I'm looking back and I'm like, man, 2024 has been the most joyful year of my life. But why? I live in the same house. I drive the same car. I'm not where I want to be in my career. I have not bought one pair of shoes this year. And for some of y'all, that's like, oh, that's no big deal. But guys, I'm a sneakerhead. We buy shoes monthly. When they drop, we get them and we do it again. That's just how life is for us. Not one pair of shoes I bought this year, but somehow I'm so joyful and so happy. Then I started to think, why is that? Why am I so joyful? I'm the type of person that can hardly celebrate when I succeed or do something great because I immediately start thinking about, okay, how do I do that again? How do I succeed again? How do I prosper again? And that's because the way that I was living and the things that I felt like was coming to me, I felt like I was doing that. I felt that I was doing those things. I felt like it was me who was making myself prosper, and it was me and the hard work that I was doing that was making the blessings come. And ultimately, I realized that I was depending on myself so much, I wasn't dependent on the Lord at all. And that's why I had this fleeting joy that would come and go, come and go. Ultimately, I had built my joy on a foundation that was about blessings that came, physical things, relationships that was going good or not good, how I was doing in the workplace, money that I have or didn't have in my bank account. That had become the foundation of my joy. And when that turned, and when the foundation of my joy turned into a joy in the Lord, a foundation that was so firm that it couldn't be shaken no matter what happened in life, no matter what season I was in, a foundation that would last forever, a joy that I can always hold on to. That's when I really started to live, and I started to love, and I started to just be happy. My ability to smile, it was so much easier. And that's what I want for us. That's what I want us to be able to live in. That's what I want us to be able to have. A foundation that is of the Lord, a foundation that can never be shaken no matter what happens. And so I actually want to invite the band up as I get ready to close this morning. As I do that, I wanted to leave you guys with a few words that I felt was kind of like the epitome of joy, the definitions of joy, the things that would bring us joy that nobody could take away. One of those things, love, sacrifice, gratitude for all the Lord does for us. contentment in the Lord and gratefulness, our worship, having purpose in the Lord, and going on a journey with the Lord. Grace, a grace that comes from God and a grace that we give to others. Reconciliation, maybe there's relationships that had been lost. Maybe it's our relationship with God that had been lost, and in getting that back. Forgiveness, our ability to forgive others truly, and our ability to receive forgiveness from God. And lastly, being in close proximity with Him. Those are the things, when I think about joy, true joy, those are the things that now come to mind. Not how much money I have, not who I'm dating, not how well school is going, not how well work is going, not how much freedom I feel like I have or financial freedom, any of those things. When I think about joy, I think about, does it come from the Lord? Because if the joy that I'm experiencing, if it doesn't come from the Lord, I don't want it. That's not the type of joy I want to have, because I know eventually it will go away. And I'm not standing up here to say that we can't be excited when those things happen. We can't be happy to have a bigger house or a better car or for things to be going well for us. But what I'm saying is that can't be everything. That can't be where we live or die. It has to be on Christ. And then when those things does happen, we celebrate them. And whether they come or go, whether they're here for a long time or whether they flee really quick, it's okay, because my joy comes from the Lord, and I know that that's something that nobody can ever take from me. So in closing, I wanted to give a few verses that I felt like highlighted this so much, highlighted what it means to not go through the moments of life anymore, but to be on mission with God and to experience a more sustainable joy. I'm going to start with John 15:11. This passage comes from when Jesus was talking to his people about being the true vine, saying, I am the true vine. And it says, these things I have spoken to you, that my joy may remain in you, and that your joy may be full. In this verse, Jesus is teaching his disciples about the importance of abiding in Him, staying connected to Him like branches to a vine. The things He has spoken refer to instructions and truths He shared, which, when followed, leads believers into a close, sustaining relationship with Him. This relationship isn't based on temporary feelings or fluctuating circumstances. Instead, it roots us in God's character and promise. As a result, we experience a lasting, full joy that doesn't fade when life gets hard. This joy is sustainable because it comes directly from Jesus, who is constant and unchanging. Next verse I want to share comes from Philippians 4:4. And this was a part of Paul's final message to the church of Philippi, final encouragement. And it says, rejoice in the Lord always. I will say it again, rejoice. This verse urges believers to maintain a posture of rejoicing, not just occasionally, but always. The key is that joy is rooted in the Lord rather than in our ever-changing circumstances. By anchoring our joy in God's unchanging character and promises, we tap into a sustainable source of gladness that isn't depending on life's ups and downs. This kind of joy remains steady and firm because it is founded on who God is and not on what we feel and face day to day. And lastly, I want to read from Psalm 16:11. And this was a prayer from David, sort of reminding himself of who God has been to him and what God has meant to him. And it says this, you make known to me the path of life. In your presence there is fullness of joy. At your right hand all pleasures are forevermore. This verse teaches that true lasting joy comes from being in God's presence. It is not a fleeting emotion triggered by favorable circumstances, but a fullness of joy that endures because it is anchored in God himself. When we seek him, he guides us towards a life aligned with his will, and in the closeness to God, we discover joy that is complete and unending. This isn't a temporary happiness, it is a joy that exists forevermore, showing us that the sustainable joy is directly tied to our relationship and ongoing communion with the Lord. And so my prayer and my hope for us this morning is that we do not make our moments of temporary pleasures that the world brings, we do not let that overshadow what the Lord has done in our lives. My prayer is that when we think about joy, we don't think about the things that we desire and the things that we want, but we think about the things that we already have, a gift that was freely given, a gift to be completely covered from our sins, a gift to have every bad thing we've ever done be washed away, a gift to be forgiven, a gift to be sanctified, a gift to be holy, a gift to someday see God and be in his presence. Let our joy come from the fact that the Lord died on the cross for us so that we may be saved and nothing else. Can I have you guys stand to your feet? In closing, I want to finish and end by reciting the Lord's Prayer. But before I do, I just want to encourage you, if you feel as if the type of joy that you've been experiencing over the years has come solely from earthly things, things that's maybe not of the Lord, things that you feel like doesn't sustain you, and you want to experience a joy that is purely from the Lord, you want to experience what it's like to fully depend on him, I encourage you, bring it to God. Bring it to God. Tell him exactly how you're feeling. Tell him exactly what you feel like you've been going through. Repent and just ask the Lord to reveal to you what that looks like in your own life. What does it look like to be completely joyful in him and him alone? So with that, let's recite the Lord's Prayer together. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come.